Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and more. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you are listening right now. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Marisa Thompson. Marisa is a mom, a wife, a high school English teacher, professional development instructor, presenter, instructor at the University of San Diego, a traveler, and a liver of life. I love that. Follow Marisa on Twitter at Marisa E. Thompson, on Instagram at marisa.e.thompson, and on her blog at unlimitedteacher.com. And we're going to come back to that blog shortly. Marisa, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
Always.
All right. Well, I like that. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context? What does that look like for you on a daily basis?
So it's just changed recently in the last year. I decided to go for a dream that I've been playing with. And right now I am a part-time teacher, a part-time, I guess, instructional coach, but I call myself teacher support.
Okay.
And then I also do some work with the University of San Diego at the Jacobs Institute. And I do professional development courses for them. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that is a little bit of everything. And so a really nice mix. And I hope you're not finding that it's sort of a case of 40% at each that actually becomes 80% at each, and then you're completely overtaxed and running around. But I like the different venues and exposures you've obviously got right now.
Well, yeah, and it was that, especially in the beginning. But now that I've gotten my feet into it, it's been a good 6 months or so of doing all of these different things. I now just feel like I'm in education. You know, when people are like, oh, what do you do? And I used to say, oh, I'm a classroom teacher. And now, oh, I'm in education because I'm in all these different roles. And it's so much fun, the variety. It's awesome.
It's fantastic. And, I keep thinking that the longer I spend in EduTwitter, San Diego really is the education hotbed. So I just I think eventually I'm going to have to move down there. That's all there is to it. But
you're always welcome, of course. Absolutely. Come join us.
Well, Marisa, it's story time. So one thing we love to hear on the program is a little bit about one of your low moments or an experience of adversity that you faced somewhere in your teaching or education career, and then describe, of course, as well, how you overcame it.
Yeah, because we all have those moments, right? So I had a very clear vision of the kind of teacher that I wanted to be. And so much of that came from Hollywood, right? All those movies that we always watch, especially before the beginning of the school year to get inspired. And I realized a few years in that I was not the teacher that I had intended to be. And I kind of fell into a groove. I fell into a rut. And I decided really after about 7 years that I needed to leave the classroom. And so I was going, of all things, inspirational, to become a corporate trainer. And I ended up not doing that. And for personal reasons, like I knew that soon I would be starting a family, and it was more logistics than anything. But I realized that I needed to change some things in order to just, like my job on a daily basis. I love my students, but I didn't like my job. And so I ended up having this idea, and it wasn't anything big. I saw it on Pinterest. It was flexible seating. And I went into a principal I didn't know super well. And I pitched this idea to him, and he said, great, go do it. And I never anticipated that anyone would say yes to an idea that I had, because I had always heard, from educators everywhere, like, oh, they don't let you try anything. They don't let you do anything. They don't say yes. They don't. And that was definitely not the experience. And then as soon as I heard my first yes, that was it. And I knew that I could go in with an idea and I could get support if I had thought it through, if I had energy behind it, and if I had already considered some of the obstacles and some of the solutions. I knew I would get a yes. So that was really, that started like a 7-year free-for-all for me. It was so much fun. Yeah.
That's such a powerful story because you got that green light, and like you said, it took you by surprise, and then that in turn sort of gave you momentum, right, to try other things, and it gave you that encouragement. I mean, that's really a case of inertia and momentum, I think is the point I'm trying to make. So, administrators listening out there, when you think about that teacher, that educator who comes to you with a brilliant plan, or some kind of, it might not be brilliant, it might be low level, whatever it is, think about the further implications down the road of how you may set that teacher on fire with a yes.
Yes.
Well, Marissa's got great pictures of her classroom and videos on her Twitter and Instagram feed, so make sure you drop by there. I do want to go to TQE, and I'll set this up a little bit, Marissa. As it so happens, I am just now getting into an 8th grade lit circle unit with my students. And I love what you've developed by way of the TQE method, something that you wrote about at length in a 2018 blog post called "We're Killing the Love of Reading, but Here's an Easy Way to Fix It." And of course, I've heard so many great reviews. So this is the year I have to give it a try. As a teacher looking for less packaged Q&A and interested in more organic engagement and analysis with text in my English classroom, what do I need to know about TQE?
I think the best thing to know is that they're going to be growing pains for you and for the students, but they're going to go away. And the more that you practice it and the more that you train with it, it'll take a few weeks and then it'll take off. It'll take off. And it is such a joy. It's less work for you and for the students. So the stress level comes down. Everyone starts to feel really safe in the space. And you start having those authentic conversations about literature like you had in college. It's really that in depth. And so a lot of teachers have taken it, ran with it, tweaked it, applying different practices that they've, used in other classes or other content areas or whatever. And it's being used from elementary school through grad school in all sorts of subjects, not just English. And that really surprised me. But I think it's clear that everybody has a thought about whatever it is that they're taking in. Everyone has something to offer back. And so giving people that space and that time and that language and that culture really to go ahead and start sharing ideas, they'll find the joy in that and it'll start to build on itself. So it started with TQE and then it has now, I don't want to say infected because how negative is that, but it's affected every other part of teaching for me and every other part of the aspects of my classroom. My students, it's everything.
It connects so well with other great pedagogical principles like inquiry, and we're trying to move into that higher level thinking, right, away from the low level formulaic literature approaches that we grew up with. And I was just thinking, listening to you, and all of that was music to my ears. I realized we probably left some educators in the dust. So I should back up and just say TQE stands for thoughts, questions, and epiphanies. And if you can picture, now you correct me here, but if you can picture students and reading and analyzing text on their own in advance, and then during dedicated class time, sharing these thoughts, questions, and epiphanies at whiteboards typically, and then engaging organically from there. Do I have that right?
You're darn close. Yeah. So they interact with the text on their own. I don't have, make these particular symbols. I don't have lists of questions. I start with some questions to kind of get them to the kind of thinking that I want, but they take their annotations on their own. They come in with their own thoughts, their own lingering questions, their own epiphanies about life or humanity, whatever. And then they get into a small group for 15 minutes, discuss those things, and then they curate that discussion. And the top 2 thoughts or whatever comes out of that discussion, that goes on the board and becomes our class focus.
That's the part I was missing. So thank you for that. So Marissa, a follow-up is this whole business of assessment, because we know that assessment drives learning in so many ways. So I'm sure you've had this question many times. As a teacher, how are you offering feedback? Are you looking for quantity of contributions, quality, or other factors that I'm not thinking of?
So quantity is really important, right? Because I need the students to participate, but I'm not assessing them on that participation. I'm assessing them on 2 things, which is what I would assess them for lists of questions or quizzes or novel tests. You're looking for reading comprehension, first and foremost. right? One of our major standards. But then also author's purpose, right? Can you analyze a choice that an author made and tell me how that affects the message that they're trying to convey? Because if you can do those two things, my reading standards are hit, right? So I'm looking for those two things constantly, but I give myself and I give my students multiple days to prove to me their skills. So when I look at, standards-based grading or skills-based grading, I'm looking for those two skills, but I need it to be consistency. If I'm going to call you a master, then you can do that on a regular basis. So as soon as I feel that I've got that for this particular book and this particular student, reading comprehension and analytical thought, I'm done assessing you. I can move on to somebody else.
Thank you so much. This might end up getting played in my class this week. So thank you so much. What a privilege. And again, I'm so grateful for this podcast to be able to connect with you. Well, Marisa, as you look across your PLN and your own practice today, what else is setting you on fire about education?
Just last week, my students did TED Talk style speeches, right? So not a perfected formal speech, but what do you think? Communicate it to your intended audience. That's us. And we explored the concepts of happiness and success. And the first student that got up, and we had practiced 2 weeks, we had written it, studied things. This kid gets up and he goes, I'm really nervous because I haven't practice this. I had a thought last night and I don't want to tell you my planned speech. I want to tell you about what I realized last night. And so he just speaks from his heart, and you could see the nerves on the kid. The class erupts in clapping and just freaking out. All of a sudden, kid after kid after kid, every student came up and said, okay, I liked what he said. It made me think about this. And so I'm getting rid of my speech too. And everyone just all of a sudden started speaking from their heart in the moment. One student even raised her hand and goes, can I go again? Because I wanted to say this other thing. I was like, of all the times that we, prepare kids for how much, anxiety they feel for getting up and public speaking, right? And getting up and speaking in front of each other. It was so fun because they were like, we're vibing right now. And I'm like, yeah, I don't actually use that term, but you're right. You are. And yeah, if you want to get up again, go ahead. So, really allowing students to be vulnerable and speak from their soul to each other is always going to get authenticity from the listener as well. And so there's great respect there. But I've been working right now in some other venues solving those really massive education problems, teacher burnout or teacher shortage, a lack of creativity, and just really, or even like support for veterans. We support our new teachers. But once you get past 5 years, how much support is there really? You even have to fight to go and search out some PD opportunities. So really finding a way to channel that energy, identify those issues, and then find a way to kind of hack away at it.
All of that is sounding amazing, Marisa. I think you might be my new best friend in EduTwitter because we've got TED Talks coming up here shortly, again in my 8th grade practice, and spoken word poetry slams in April. So
Nice.
I love the sound of everything you're dropping over there. Yeah. Well, Marisa, how are you looking to grow professionally and improve your practice this year, either for 2020 or maybe in the coming school year? Can you share with us about a specific professional goal or maybe a project that you're currently working on?
Yeah, and that's tough, right? Because I'm in different realms. So I'm in 3 places. So one of the things that I'm trying to do in my classroom, I work in a traditional space. And so my school year is divvied up by 5 class novels. And I want to break away from that. Sometimes I'll get into like a lit circle, but I would love to be able to provide literary freedom. We know it works. We know it's good for kids. But I also want to make sure that we're still having that shared, that connected experience, and providing that space to have those discussions, because I think that's everything. And right now that's centered around my literature. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do that. What else? Oh, my teacher support. I'm trying to do a bunch of 2-minute mini tutorials, right? You just need that little bit of a taste of an idea so that you can run with something else, just that little spark. And so I'm making those in my teacher support role. And I'm designing some courses right now for the Jacobs Institute at USD. And I'm trying to use inspiration from everyday experiences or big experiences. Like my family just got back from 3 days at Disneyland, and I'm going to be designing courses at Disneyland. So we would all go together, have this shared experience, and then come back and do a workshop and work through it. And people would get certified in educational innovation, educational imagineering. So lots of little things going on, but it's fun. It's exciting.
That is super cool. Well, Marisa, we also on the show, I like to pull back the curtains and find out a little bit more about what ignites your passions when you leave the classroom or you leave the campus. So tell us about another area of learning for you. What brings you alive as a human being and really attracts more learning outside of education?
Oh man, I love that question. My ultimate passion in life, besides my family, and I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. So that's always an adventure and inspiring and really transfers to education for me, especially my interactions with my students and with their parents. But my ultimate passion is travel. I love to travel. I grew up traveling. My family was not well off at all, but my mom worked for the airlines. And so starting at 9 years old, I was traveling internationally. So I'm at somewhere over 20 countries, and I'm going through withdrawals right now because I can't travel with my little ones yet. I don't have the funds to be able to make that happen, but that's me. I've taken students internationally as well to Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Peru, Greece, Turkey, and that's where my heart is. So if anybody just has like billions of dollars, or if I ever win the lottery, all I want to do, I want to set up a scholarship program to send kids out of their bubble, right? Go see other cultures, go see other lands, go see other things, because there's only good that can come from that. That's my world.
Amazing. I'm with you, and I hear you on the funds too. That's the curse of reading a lot, but living on a teacher's salary. So we do
Exactly.
what we can. Well, Marisa, it's time for your quick picks. Here we want to know the education voices and resources that are shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So starting at Twitter, tell us about someone we should follow there and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
Julia Fliss.
Yes.
Julia Fliss is amazing, out of Colorado. And I got connected to her through TQE, through Twitter. And just the work that she does with her students is soulful. And it's big picture, and everything's possible. And just the enthusiasm and the optimism that's coming out of there, she just radiates it. And I've never even met her. She's someone that you need to follow. Everyone needs to follow her. But she makes me feel good about being a teacher and being a person and working with people. She is what I need. She strengthens me, and I love that about her.
I'm working on a day and time for a chat with her as well, so that's a great preview.
Oh, good.
Point us to an edtech tool that you currently love using in your classroom or somewhere else, perhaps in your professional practice.
Yeah, so I actually do presentations on this. There's something called Pro Keys, and I know that Google has kind of done something with this where you can tailor your own short keys. You use Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. You can create your own, and it'll populate a comment or information. So especially as an English teacher, I've cut down on my grading exponentially. So last year, I went from 160 hours of grading essays at home to 4 hours. Everything's in class, 100%. I haven't taken any grading home this year, and my students are better for it because everything is done together, authentically, self-assessment, peer assessment. I assess with them. We talk about it. It's changed a lot for me, and it's just a really simple tool to use. And that's on the blog as well. If anybody needs help, I'd be happy to help. But that has changed my teacher life.
Wow. Well, you just got the attention of every English teacher out there, Marisa. So thank you for that. And we're going to cut this short a little bit from my usual, but tell us about a book that's been deeply impactful.
So, especially as an English teacher, right? That's a hard question.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I love to teach East of Eden. East of Eden is a big deal. Tim Scholl, of course. But Fahrenheit 451, I think, is something that we all kind of know and remember. But just all those themes of creativity and thought and connectedness and emotion and personal drive and collaboration and free thinking, and even education's in there, which is really fun to read about the way that he's in that world. And I love the idea that he's breaking out despite all possible repercussions, that it's possible and it's good and there's a better world, even if it's a little bit harder. I think that that effort is worth it. And I think Fahrenheit really embodies that and communicates that so well.
Fahrenheit was one of those classic reads that was on my list forever. I finally got to it last year and wow, absolutely loved it. So I'm with you on that one. I have to ask you, just because I was tweeting about this morning, are you analog only when it comes to the book reading, or are you have you got a little bit of the Kindle Kobo going as well?
I like to turn the pages. I like the smell of a book, but as long as, and same thing for my students, if you want to read on a Kindle, great. If you want to listen to an audiobook, great. And Fahrenheit says this, you need quality information and time to think about it, but it doesn't say you need a page. It doesn't say you need a screen. It doesn't say any of that. It's about the people, the time you get, and the depth of your conversation with each other. That's what it's about.
That's a perfect note to end on. Marisa, what are the best ways for the listeners to follow you and find out more about what it is that you're about?
Well, yeah, you listed it at the beginning. So I am on Twitter, Marisa E. Thompson, and then Instagram, marisa.e.thompson. And my blog is unlimitedteacher.com. But I also use the hashtags TQE, of course, because that gets a lot of play and we discuss a lot of things. But I also use the hashtag unlimited teacher. So even if you just search unlimited teacher, you will find me. No problem.
Sounds good, Marisa. Again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. This has been fun. It's been enlightening. It's been super helpful for me personally and professionally, and I so appreciate your time today. So take care, and let's talk again soon.
Thanks, Tim. Take care.
Before we sign off today, I'd like to share some highlights from around the Teachers on Fire community this week. Our first stop is on Twitter, and first I need to set up a little bit of a thread there. Former guest of Teachers on Fire and friend Scott Nunes at Mr. Nunes Teach kicked it off with a tweet that read, "Principles are the formula for success." And Scott attributed the quote to @Ray Dalio, learning from @Gary V. And of course, he included a picture or a screenshot from the Gary V podcast. It's actually called the Gary V Audio Experience. If you don't know who Gary V is, just stay with me. I replied to that tweet, "For a kid who failed at the game of school, @Gary V has done more to teach and inspire others than most teachers will ever do. Courage, creativity, content, patience, persistence. I like what he's about." And then other friends jumped into the thread, @Jeff Gargis, @Jake Miller Tech, and others. And Gary V responded. He tweeted, "This is humbling to read. Thank you for your kindness." Gary's content comes with a language warning, and his style isn't for everyone. But as I wrote in my tweet, his vision for the ability we all have to share ideas and content resonates with our professional practice. The old gatekeepers of media, networks, and publishers are dying. This podcast is evidence of that. As Gary would say, we are living in the absolute greatest time in history to share art and creative ideas. And that is a message I seek to bring to my learners each and every week. And so, yeah, Gary V is not an educator, but he makes my Twitter highlight of the week. He does have 2.1 million followers, so to get a reply in that thread was pretty awesome. Thanks again to Scott Nunes at Mr. Nunes Teach for starting those great comments. Next, over on Instagram, Lisa Johnson at NoteChef4You commented, "This looks fantastic, can't wait to listen," in response to my post about episode 116 with guest Caitlin Krause. Thank you, Lisa, for that. And to all of you who have read, viewed, liked, retweeted, commented, or replied in any way to my content on any of these platforms, thank you. You are the fuel to my fire, and I so appreciate your support. Over on YouTube, I've started vlogging this year. It's still scary new territory for me, but it is happening. This week I published 12 Google Classroom strategies that you should start using today. Make sure you drop by my channel by searching Teachers on Fire on YouTube, and you'll find me. I also want to shout out the lovely Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium, where I think we broke a record with 9 published posts. They included 2 by Dr. Deborah M. Vereen, who wrote The Contemporary Face of Family Engagement in the Digital Age, and A Glimpse at Family Engagement in Education. Brad Davis wrote 3 posts: How to Manage Everything and Still Love Teaching Kids, a realistic conversation of the ways we balance all of life's responsibilities while maintaining our passion and fire. He also wrote A Place for Everything and Everything in Its Place, where he talked about the necessity of teaching those organization skills to our digital natives. And he published How to Teach a Middle Schooler to Ignore a Bully. Caitlin Giordano published Turn Off the Scoreboard, where she asks, what exactly is the purpose of grading with points and percentages? I wrote, as I mentioned on the vlog, I also blogged a piece called 12 Google Classroom Strategies to Start Using Today. Those are not research. Those come directly from my own practice, so check out what I am doing on Classroom. Debbie Tannenbaum wrote 2 new pieces, one titled Start Right Now, Promoting Vision, where she talks about how being a connected educator has truly changed her life, and Challenge, 21 Days Later, where she talks about her progress with her one-word 2020, which was, of course, challenge. The Teachers on Fire magazine is a Medium publication, and you'll find it on medium.com or through the Medium app. If you're already an education blogger, you should consider joining our growing writing team. You can continue to publish content on your own blog, and you keep full credit and ownership of your content on Medium. And the Medium platform compensates you based on the engagement and read time your articles earn there. Message me at Teachers on Fire on any social media platform for more details. I want to leave you with this quote from my Reading Teachers on Fire. It comes from a book called Launch, Using Design Thinking to Boost Creativity and Bring Out the Maker in Every Student. It's written by AJ Giuliani at AJ Giuliani and John Spencer at Spencer Ideas. And the quote reads this way: in our experience, when students are thinking creatively, they are fully engaged in their learning. And I think the point there is to think about the difference in learning, actual learning, when students are creating something versus when they are listening and absorbing. That act of creation demands more, it requires more, and I think that's what the authors are pointing to. Again, the quote, in our experience, when students are thinking creatively, they are fully engaged in their learning. Again, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard from Marisa Thompson ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care and have a great week.